And I'm suitably delighted to say that Chief Joop Berkhout joins me now in the studio. Great to see you, Joop.
Good to see you.
You don't look a day over 50. It's all a joke, isn't it?
I feel it sometimes.
But let me ask you this. What was it that attracted you to Africa in general and Nigeria in particular? Because you were in Gambia before you came to
Zambia,
Nigeria.
Tanzania.
I mean, was it just a thirst for travel and excitement and the challenge which Africa and Nigeria seemed to offer, or was it something else?
I think more or less destiny. One thing followed the other. I was in Tanzania, a bookseller. Then I was invited by Oxford University Press to go to Zambia. There I worked for 2 years, and then they wanted to transfer me to Europe, and I don't think I fancied Europe too much. I thought Africa is very exciting. There are more opportunities in Africa than anywhere else in the world. So then the same day, Evans Brothers came to Zambia and they offered me the job to go to Nigeria for 2 years to set up the company. And the 2 years has now developed in 56 years. And so I was 10 years with Evans. Then I was transferred again to UK. After 3 months, I did not like it. I came back to Nigeria and set up my own company, Spectrum Books, which I sold in 2008. But then I decided that I was too young not to do anything, so I reactivated Safari Books. So now I'm running Safari Books.
That's extraordinary. And you arrived in Nigeria in 1966. Mm-hmm. That's the first time you'd ever come to Nigeria.
That's right, yes.
And 6 years, that was just 6 years after Nigeria attained independence. Right, yeah. So a young country, thrusting, full of energy, vibrant, and your arrival was 1 year before this country descended into civil war. What was the mood of Nigeria when you arrived? I'm trying to gauge, because subsequently after you came, a war broke out. So things must have been pretty tense, and still you decided to stay.
Well, first of all, when I came here, we only had 48 million people. So it was manageable. And the most of the publishing was done in the East, because the largest reading public was in the East for everybody. And with the Civil War, we lost everything. So I then opened up the North. I traveled widely in the North, and we did very well in the North and in the West. And then when the war was over, things, the population grew, but then I visited the East again, where I met, when he came back, Ojukwu, of course, who became one of my main authors.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about all that in a moment, but I'm trying to understand, when you arrived in Nigeria, it was 1966, there were allegations of ethnic conflict in the north. There was, they'd just come out of the riots, the political riots in the west. The east was threatening to break away. The mood in the country must have been pretty tense, and yet you decided to stay.
I don't remember. Things were much easier then, and relaxed. One could travel around, and it didn't affect average person who was operating there. It was an entirely different country.
Well, it certainly didn't affect you as a foreigner, did it?
No, never.
Yeah, but people were, the country was in a bit of agony at that point.
That's true. It has been all the 56 years, there has been one problem or the other. But when we came here, people were very hospitable, and we started a company, and people accepted me, and I could do my work like anywhere else in the world. My wife was here, my children were here, they did schooling in Ibadan. It was an entirely different lifestyle then. You know, our fence was very low, you could climb over it, there was no robbery, it was all very peaceful. We had water, we had electricity, which we don't have now.
And still you stayed?
Yes, because I liked it. Because I was doing my own work. I'm a very independent person. I was not working for anybody, I was working for myself.
And you've mentioned that the reading culture was much more prevalent in the southeast when you came. That was where you were doing most of your business, selling books and so on, was that right? Yeah. So why did you settle in Ibadan as opposed to another part of Nigeria?
Well, that is history. You know, the first university in Nigeria is the University of Ibadan. So all the British publishers originally all settled in Ibadan. That was the center of publishing. Oxford University, Longman, Heinemann, Macmillan, they were all based in Ibadan. Ibadan was the center of publishing.
Right. Okay, so that answers the question about why you went. I mean, it seemed to make sense to go there. Now, many people, most especially Nigerians, are very critical of this country. They're very critical of the slow pace of development, falling standards of things like education. You played quite a significant part in education. They're critical of the economy. What do you think is the problem with Nigeria, or don't you see a problem here? I mean, you've lived here for 55 years.
Well, first of all, I think the population explosion, that should have been controlled like they did in India. But population explosion can also positive because the market is getting larger.
Right. So you think the reason why people the pace of development has slowed and why standards have fallen with things like education and the economy is because of the growing population?
No, yes, definitely.
Is it just the growing population, or is it the way the country is managed?
Well, everybody wanted to go to school, and people are very keen to learn. And there are now over 100 universities, for instance. When I came, there were only 9 universities.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that standards are going to fall because there are more universities.
Well, to a certain extent.
I'm trying to get to the reason why, from your assessment, why you think standards have fallen in this country.
Overpopulation could have something to do, and we have not been perhaps being with the same trend at development as the Western world. We didn't may have the teachers, although Africa is different. I mean, you can't compare Africa with Europe or Europe with America. And Nigeria is unique in many ways. For instance, I would say in Nigeria, there is never a dull moment. There's always something new and exciting, either positive or negative.
Right. Okay, let's move away. And you mentioned Emeka Ojukwu. I read somewhere that you said Emeka Ojukwu was one of your best friends. What was it that brought you close to him? Because, I mean, you were in Nigeria during the war, and he was on the opposite side.
I didn't like him during the war. I didn't like him. I wasn't in favor of the Biafra war. I think Nigeria should have been one, but that is accidental. When I was one day in Enugu, I visited Cyprus, I went and see one of my authors. He said, you must come, you must meet Ojukwu. He had just returned them from Ivory Coast. So we went to the village, and there I met Ojukwu, and I met Frederick Forsyth.
Yes, I knew Frederick Forsyth. Yeah. I knew him from
Frederick
England.
Forsyth has written the book Emeka.
Yes, excellent book. I read it.
Well, that was a story in itself. So he offered me that book and said he wants 25,000 cash, not cash, that's check. In those days we had checks in sterling, so I gave him 24,000. And he gave me the manuscript. So we published the manuscript, we printed 200,000 copies, and the moment it was published, Zik sued me for 2 million naira, was pound.
Really?
Because
Zik, that's the book, Nnamdi Azikiwe, the first president of Nigeria.
Because it was mentioned that Ojukwu gave a check to his father to bail him out of the bank. And we couldn't prove it because Ojukwu has lost his check.
I want to talk about this a bit more because it sounds fascinating, but do stay with us because we've got to take a break. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with Joop Berkhout. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, he came to Nigeria from the Netherlands in 1966 to set up a branch of the international publishing company Evans Brothers. Nearly 6 decades later, Joop Berkhout is now a Nigerian citizen and has been awarded one of the country's highest national honors, Officer of the Order of the Niger, or OON. And he also has a chieftaincy title to his credit. He's established 2 of Nigeria's Nigeria's best-known publishing companies, Spectrum Books and Safari Books, and is a major contributor to the golden years of Nigerian literature and to the intellectual life of Nigerians. They say that Joop Berkhout may not have been born in Nigeria, but Nigeria was born inside him, and this has made his passion for the country glow more brightly than that of many Nigerians. And Chief Joop Berkhout is still with me in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. Nigeria is, of course, in its worst economic slowdown in many years. How has this affected the book publishing business in this country?
Well, definitely in the last few years it has affected that people have less means to buy books. The printing industry is also a problem. For instance, in this country, we don't make a piece of paper in Nigeria. Can you imagine? Every piece of paper is imported. Now, by the time we should have planted big plantations and have the trees, we haven't. They wanted to start a paper mill on the Jebu Road 20 years ago. Nothing happened. The crates are still unpacked, the machines have arrived, and it never happened. So we have to, years ago when I went with President Obasanjo to South Africa, he asked me to look for a paper mill organization who want to go to Nigeria. And the answer said, no. Where are your trees? And we don't have the trees. It's the basic things. And to grow a tree takes 40 for 45 years before you can use it to manufacture paper.
So, I mean, production is a big challenge to doing business here, because I understand that, for instance, obviously books for sale in the UK market, a lot of other markets are produced in the UK and in those countries, but publishers in Nigeria who want really good quality print for their books, which you often do, that was one of the reasons you had a good reputation. I understand they often go to India and places like
Dubai, India. The publishing and the printing industry for books is more or less halted in UK. We used to go to UK. It was expensive, but there are not many printers anymore who print books in the UK. But India is the largest, very good quality. Dubai is also, but the distance, no. But if you ship it, you have to go all around the Cape to come here.
Yes, and I mean, you mentioned the lack of trees. That's just one problem. I mean, the Nigerian publishing market is, I understand, fraught with a lot of uncertainties, including unreliable electricity and transport and all that sort of thing. How did you cope with all that?
Well, you got the generator.
Right. But but a lot of people are publishing in Nigeria, though. Is it the quality?
We publish in Nigeria. We do some printing if it is urgent. But it is not the same quality and the finish. But there are some very good printers now. But they are far more expensive than printing overseas, because they themselves have to import everything to make a book.
Right. So they then add to the.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
The duties, etc. So that makes it more expensive.
Right.
We don't make one item to produce a book in Nigeria.
Right. So, would you say that the Nigerian literary scene would you say that the Nigerian literary scene, the book scene?
Well, it's developing.
It's developing. Has it ever really
A
flourished?
lot of new authors are coming up, very good authors.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that there are quite a lot of people, because, I mean, beyond the great authors that emerged in the 1960s, Chinua Achebe, Wole Soyinka, Cyprian Ekwensi, etc., and of course, in today's world, Chimamanda Adichie, has there been much domestic appetite for Nigerian literature? I'm not talking about the people who are writing the books, I'm talking about the people who are consuming the works. Like we've seen with, for instance, Afrobeats music, which became huge in Nigeria before it became popular anywhere else, or Nollywood movies and that kind of thing, which are all part of the art scene. Because all these writers seem to have been recognized abroad first before they became popular in Nigeria. And it seems to be the only ones who are really recognized here are the ones who become popular overseas.
That's right. Well, the reading culture has gone down. People have no time, people have no light sometimes to read all sorts of things. But what is developing, which we are concentrating on biographies and autobiographies, that is now a very big in. Many people would like to have the story, and one of the days I will come to you to get your biography.
Well, it would be a boring book.
I don't think so. I know you.
It would most certainly be a boring book. But I've also heard many publishers complaining that entering the Nigerian publishing market is difficult because of the weak distribution links inside the country and also between Nigeria and other countries, for example. Is that right?
Well, especially nowadays, it is very difficult to travel. I mean, for us, you don't go in a car and drive from Ibadan to Kano if you love your life, because that has all changed in the last 2 or 3 years. Yes, transportation, you go by air as much as possible, and the security is, of course, of a great danger at the moment. I hope it will be settled. But having said all these things, we are doing very well with biographies. Some eminent people want to write the books. We are encouraging them. And interesting enough, Abuja has become a major center for us where we get manuscripts.
A lot of manuscripts.
Yeah, yes, good material.
I'm fascinated with the idea, though, that in spite of all these challenges and privations that you mentioned, that you stayed on in Nigeria.
Never give up.
Because the reason I say that is that, I mean, if you don't mind my saying so, I mean, I know your house in Richmond upon Thames in London, beautiful place. I don't know if you've still got it, but lovely scenic views and that sort of thing. So it wasn't that you were desperate to remain in Nigeria, you just like to stay here.
There are more opportunities. I like the atmosphere, I like the weather, I like the people. It is more personal here. I've got many friends here. If you stay for 56 years in the country, you have built up a life.
Absolutely. And that's much more important, isn't it?
I tell you recently that I was stuck in England on account of Corona. It's like being living in a prison. But when I came here, we ignored them more or less, and you got the freedom.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, and also the human aspect of relation. It's not just the sort of the order and the buildings; it's the human contact.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? What about you mentioned the lack of reading culture, or the death of reading culture in Nigeria. That's a topic that seems to come up regularly at Nigerian literary events. What's the reason or the reasons behind that? I know you mentioned that, but I want you to expand on it. I've heard it attributed to the falling standards of education, poverty, online distractions, the internet, that sort of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think with the increase of population, that also wiped out that in relation with the past, you still have that number of people who are interested to read. There is a great interest at the moment for autobiographies, to read the stories of important people, how they arrived what they are today.
But is it that many people just don't see books as a priority? I mean, if you're mired in poverty and you're having to spend 3,000-4,000 naira to buy one book, I mean, that doesn't seem to be something that would take up your sort of, that you would want to spend money.
2,000, 5,000, up to 5,000-6,000 naira for a book.
Yeah.
But El Rufai's book,
the governor of Kaduna State.
Yeah, that sold 50,000 copies, and in addition, the pirates took over.
The pirates?
The pirates took over.
That's a big threat, isn't it?
You have to be very careful. The moment you publish a good book, the pirates step in.
Okay, stay with us. We want to talk with you some more. You're watching The Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with Joop Berkhout, the publisher and Dutchman who came to Nigeria in 1966 and has stayed in the country ever since. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, my guest today is Chief Joop Berkhout, who was born in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, but moved to Nigeria in 1966 and has remained in the country ever since. He was the founding managing director of Evans Brothers Publishers in 1967 and would go on to establish Spectrum Books in 1978 and Safari Books in 1991. Through both publishing businesses, he's published many books, including works by heads of state and some of this country's most popular authors. He's also been a big supporter of the Nigerian education sector, and for his contribution to the advancement of education in Nigeria, he was awarded a National Honor Officer of the Order of the Niger, or OON. He's also been given a chieftaincy title, the Okun Borede of Ife. He's trained many publishers, and at the age of 91, Joop Berkhout is considered to be the ranking member of Nigeria's publishing industry. He's also the past Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the Governing Council of the Michael and Cecilia Ibru University in Delta State. What a guy. And Joop Berkhout is still with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us. And you were talking earlier, you wanted to talk a bit more about along that theme of your meeting with Emeka Ojukwu and your publication of his book.
Yeah, so I was in, when Emeka came back from Ivory Coast, Cyprian Quincy took me to his house in Nenwi. And there I met Frederick Forsyth, and he said, I got here a book about Emeka, a small book, and I said earlier on, we paid advance royalty of 24,000, and Frederick Forsyth gave the check to Ojukwu as a welcome present to the country. So I was very happy with the manuscript. We published it, we printed 200,000, and Zik then sued us for 2 million because there was a state and about a check, and Ojukwu lost the check, the copy of the check. So I was in Canada, so if they give order, destroy the book and reprint 250,000, which we did without it, and we sold that in a couple of months. That was one of our major contact which I had with Ojukwu.
I didn't quite get the bit about Zik. You said Zik Nnamdi Azikiwe, of course, the first president of Nigeria. You said I didn't quite get the bit you were talking.
He sued us.
Your company.
Yeah, for
Spectrum.
For making a statement that he was given 250,000 pounds to bail him out for the bank by Ojukwu.
Right.
And Ojukwu lost a copy of the check, so he couldn't prove it.
Okay.
And hence we had to destroy the book.
That's quite extraordinary, isn't it? But I read the book Emeka, though. I thought it was a fascinating... I mean, I've always admired Frederick Forsyth. I know him. I met him personally in the UK.
So then later on, I became very good friends with Ojukwu. I liked him, and we did Because I'm Involved, but easily...
Yes, I remember that as well.
Then talking about Nigeria, when we did Because I'm Involved, I used to stay with him, and then he was courting Bianca, and Bianca was 90 and he was something in the 60s. I said, listen, could be your daughter? He said, listen.
Did that make you think, wow, this chap's having a bit of fun, perhaps I should get on the bandwagon?
He said to me, listen, if a beautiful woman comes to me, what do I do? So they got married. I was the best man at his wedding in Nenwi. I went to his Catholic wedding so we became very close, very, very good friends. And I'm still waiting for his biography, which is somewhere hidden, but we don't know where.
Well, that would be a fascinating read, wouldn't it? But of course, the evidence, we were talking earlier, you and I, about the lack of a reading culture in Nigeria. And I suppose the evidence for that is the abysmal sales at bookshops across Nigeria. I mean, we've seen a dramatic decrease in the sale of fiction in particular. Somebody said, I mean, it could take anywhere from 3 to 5 years to sell off a print run of about 3,000 books. Do you find that sort of difficulty in reaching Nigerian readers?
Well, it all depends of the book. If the title is popular, it will sell. But a lot of school books, but there are school books being published, readers, but general fiction is still in vogue. But we have not enough booksellers. But now we sell books online. We have African Collective. People can buy from there. They can buy from Amazon. So the market is going in another way. You don't go to a bookshop because there are only very few bookshops in this country.
But I mean, in terms of the strategy that you've had to adopt, maybe not today, but over the years, looking at that changing culture, book culture in Nigeria. I mean, a lot of publishers stopped paying things like royalties and things, didn't they? They just, collect, you pay them to publish your book. So it became a sort of self-publishing thing, and then they would have a book launch where they'd hope that a lot of people would come
book launch
and buy.
is very popular, yes.
Yeah, tell us about that and how it evolved into that.
Well, a book, if there's a book, if the person is very known, a book launch is very important, and books are being sold, but perhaps not in the numbers as in the past. We may do 5,000 or 10,000. Well, years ago you could print 50,000 or 100,000. Like I did with the Mecca books, we sold 250,000. People were queuing up. But then on the other hand is that if we have a good book, there is still piracy, a lot of piracy.
Piracy is a big problem.
A big problem. But in spite of all this problem, we are surviving.
So how do you deal with piracy then?
You can't do much, we don't even know them. Well, when I did El-Rufai's book, we did printed 50,000, then we were told it's pirated illegal, so El-Rufai and I went in a car, and everywhere we saw pirated copies, we said, let me have a copy, and we confiscated the copy, and they were running away. But that didn't solve the problem. You can also say if a book is pirated, it is in demand. So there's a kind of advertising as well. And sometimes there's not much difference between a pirated book and an original published book. It's almost the same. But you always have problems, whatever happens. If there's a problem, you try to solve it.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a monumental problem, doesn't it?
No,
because I mean, it hits the bottom line. It hits your profits, your bottom line, and we're looking at that book.
But you reduce your number of copies, but there's still a market for what you publish and what you develop, because after all, the publisher is developing the book with also together.
Right. So in today's world, in today's Nigeria, what are the books that sell the most in Nigeria? Is it fiction that is most popular, or do people here like to buy motivational books? Because I find a lot of them all over the place.
Religious books, Christian books and Muslim books, and also school books. School book is a big market, and we are not in school books anymore.
Right.
But we are, my own company now is just a small company, and we're doing biographies, and that is very, very exciting.
Right. So you tend to focus on biographies.
Yeah, and autobiographies.
Because I mean, you wrote books by President Obasanjo, you wrote books by, as you said, Emeka Ojukwu, El-Rufai, Emeka Aniagolu, the former Commonwealth Secretary General, and that kind of thing. What is it that attracts you to those books? Is it the market or is it the content?
It is the person, it is the content, and then it is the selling. It is quite profitable.
And you want to be able to say, I mean, that's the book by Aniagolu. We just saw it.
Did very well.
Yeah, that was a very, that's it.
Aniagolu. No, Aniagolu, just keep it. It's a very important, interesting story. Aniagolu, we published this, and the proceeds of the royalty, I went with Obasanjo to the village, and the money was given to his mother.
Okay, he gave Obasanjo gave the money to him.
Yeah.
Well, that's jolly nice of him, isn't it?
Was it a very old book? That was during my time in Evans. Yeah.
Was it a lot of money though?
During those years, yes. Well, I don't know the figures. It's so long ago now, but it was, and also gave as a company, give you a good reputation if you publish right books.
Yeah, I mean, I think Evans, they were a lot in school books, though.
Oh yes,
they published
Evans and Spectrum. We were mainly educational publishers, like we call it, big market, And the biggest market had always been the East. But now the North is developing since the 70s or the 80s.
Yeah, but that's good. I mean, that's the way it ought to be.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to have a reading culture in a society. It doesn't matter any society.
It's very important because reading increases your knowledge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not only that, but I mean, it's that there is an extraordinary relationship between a person and a work that you simply use your imagination to, it develops your imagination, doesn't it? Quite extraordinary. So you've been here since 1966 in Nigeria. What are the trends that you've noticed in the tastes of Nigerian readers? How has it changed over the years? For instance, have people become more or less into foreign fiction? Because a lot of people used to read a lot of foreign fiction.
Always.
For enjoyment, but you had to read Nigerian fiction in school, like the Wole Soyinkas and, the Chinua Achebes and all the rest of them. But people, when they wanted to relax, they'd read James Hadley Chase and Nick Carter and all that sort of thing. Are you seeing, is that more or less the case today, or are people more into African fiction?
The Nigerian market of writing has increased considerably over the last few years. New authors are coming up. A lot of new authors have
Tell us some of the more exciting authors that you've been publishing recently.
Well, as now, it's by biography. So
right. So you tend to publish people who are obviously older because they're the ones who are likely to publish their biography.
Have a story to tell. Yes.
Right.
And biography is important because you can learn from a biography. Either it's an autobiography or it is written by somebody else.
Yeah, but do you find yourself sometimes thinking, does this thing really deserve to be published? But you find yourself having to publish it because maybe the person is quite important.
If we think the story is not good enough, we are not publishing.
Right.
We keep the literary standards, and they know this.
Yeah, but do you depend on that person? Because normally, I mean, you've got editors and who are really sort of well educated and really demanding scratch when it comes to their capacity.
We got a good team of editors and various people looking at the text and to change it. But the local publishing or the Nigerian publishing industry is developing by local writing, and some of the books are being sold overseas because we sell our books through African Book Collective all over the world.
Right. So what kind of books, what's your most recent production?
Well, two I cannot talk about because it's confidential.
Well, why is it a book if it's confidential? No, it hasn't been published yet.
No.
Okay. It's about to be.
In the pipeline, yes.
Right, okay. Anybody important?
Yeah.
Very important?
Very important.
Okay. My mind is running a bit riot there, but I will respect the fact that you don't want to talk about it sort of any further. But before that, what was the most recent? Was that El Rufai's book?
El Rufai, oh yes, it was a bestseller, yeah.
The Accidental Servants is what it's called, yeah.
That went very well indeed. Very controversial, very well written.
Right. Okay. Well, it sounds very interesting.
And we've done books by academics, small ones, 2,000, 3,000, but it has a story to tell and it is important to the country.
Right. Okay. Stay with us. We've got to talk with you a bit more. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with Chief Joop Berkhout, publisher and Dutch settler who ended up settling in Nigeria for 55 years. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. So you've published so many books in Nigeria over many years. Which would you consider to be the best seller, and why did it do so well?
In number of copies was no doubt Emeka.
Right.
The story of Ojukwu.
So that sold the most.
Does that, yes.
But there's an almost perverse story that you told me once about a book that you published on Valentine's Day. Tell us.
That's right. What men know about women
What men know about women.
That was originally published in Holland, and I got it through the Dutch embassy. So we did a reprint here, and we wrapped it in so nobody could see the text. And when they opened it, there was no content. So a lot of people telephoned, but they all bought it. It was the best.
So let me get this: it's what men know about women, and inside the book it's blank.
It was blank, and it was one of my bestsellers.
And that suggests, of course, that men don't know
in the
a jot about women.
And some people were annoyed. Some thought it was
hilarious.
It was hilarious. It was funny, but you know, there's a lot of scope in publishing. And Nigeria is a market where you could do a lot of new things.
But there were a lot of angry people who phoned you to say, what's this? Is this a mistake?
No, I said, read the title. And then they all said, then they knew about
I like that. That's brilliant. Now, you turned 91 some 3 months ago. How does it feel to be in your 9th decade on Earth?
Well, I think it's just luck I'm still around. Nigeria may be responsible for it, and I'm still around. Well, what I'm always thinking in life, if you do what you like, your work must be a hobby. If your work is not in a hobby, don't do it. But for me, publishing is a hobby. I get a kick out of it. Maybe one of the reasons. I always say I've never worked in my life. Today the people have to work. Because whatever I've done, I've enjoyed. And if you enjoy it, it's a hobby.
Well, I have to say, you look absolutely brilliant. I mean, I cannot imagine if anybody came to me, if I didn't know you, to say you're 91, I just wouldn't believe it. Because, I mean, you know, 91 is, I mean, let's face it, it's a long time on Earth.
Yeah, it's the end of life. Almost.
Well, I wouldn't say end of life, because you're still here, obviously.
Yes.
But it's a long time on Earth.
Yes, you could say so, yeah. But you know, whatever you do in life, enjoy it. And that's the main...
And is that the secret?
I never thought about retirement. That's not in my vocabulary.
That's a good idea. Because retirement suggests that you've basically given up, that you're now simply waiting to pass on.
And you know why I don't want to go to England? I would never enter in a home for the elderly. Yeah. I've seen some of my friends. It's the most destructive institution in the world.
That's a good point.
So I'm staying home in my own house. I do whatever I like. I can go out, etc.
I think that's a very good point.
So Nigeria has given me many opportunities, and I've always enjoyed to be here. And I got many friends.
And I think certainly one of the advantages of Nigeria is that it is not an ageist society like you have in the West. Everything is calibrated in the West according to your age. I mean, once you hit a certain age,
you're finished.
Yeah, they basically start making you feel like you become superfluous and unimportant. Whereas in Nigeria, age is not a big deal here, is it? And that's one of the benefits you've.
Well, my mother was 93, and she died in Australia, and she immigrated on the 80th birthday.
It's quite remarkable.
So perhaps in the family.
What part of Australia was she living in?
In Melbourne. She stayed with my sister.
Melbourne, right. So here you are, Joop, 91 years of age, 55 years spent in Nigeria. How would you suggest that this country go forward from here?
That is a very big question, especially now because we seem to have problems. And it never happened in my life, even during the Civil War, that one could not travel, that you cannot go by road to Kaduna, that you cannot go to Kano, that you cannot go to Yolengo. Even one of our driver I know very well, he was attacked on the Benin-Ibadan road, on the main road, a few days ago. So everybody is home in time, and your traveling at the moment is restricted, which is a terrible thing. And it ruins the economy. Many people have died unnecessarily. It's up to government to solve this. Many people are unemployed. Also, on account of Corona, many companies have collapsed or something. So there'll be a basic problem, but I think Nigeria, somebody said, an expatriate said, Nigeria is an interesting country. It's like somebody with a nail hanging on the cliff, and for sure the man will drop. Nigerians, they will climb back again. So let's hope that this happens here as well.
Yeah, well, that's a big question, isn't it? But given, I mean, you've enumerated the problems. What do you see as the practical solutions?
I don't know. If government doesn't know, how can I know?
But I
think government is also, there are too many people involved in government. Government is now the major employer. That's also one of the problems. Overemployment in government.
But do you feel disappointed with the country that Nigeria has evolved into? I mean, you came here in 1966 full of excitement, fascination, you know, the challenge of being in an African country, a country that was developing and growing. 55 years later, do you feel a sense of disappointment?
Well, yes, it is worrying. And for instance, somebody was talking to me that Ghana, which had many problems, they got out of it, and it's a very prosperous country now. And the security is the main issue. It's the main issue. And I have no idea what they want to do. That is a government. But sometimes politicians all over the world, they make promises and they don't fulfill them. And our population is 200 million. We have to do something about population control.
And employment.
Yeah. Have one wife and one child for the next 20 years.
Well, that might be a rather tall proposition in a country like Now, we've got about a minute left. Has it been all about books in Nigeria for you? Lots of literary memories, or more than that for you in Nigeria? What are the top experiences that mark your 55 years in Nigeria?
Dat ik got my citizenship was a highlight.
Yeah. When did you get your citizenship?
Oh, no, I forgot now, 1900 something. And I must tell that Ojukwu made a beautiful statement. He said, Joop, you're the only detribalized Nigerian.
And why would you be a detribalized Nigerian? I mean, you're a Western.
I'm not a Yoruba.
No, of course I understand that. Yeah. What I mean is that, you know, I meant that as a joke. I mean, you're living in Ibadan. Your experiences have been mostly in Yoruba land.
But so you know, in the old days in Ibadan, or even now, Muslims and Christians are intermarried, they all live together happily, no problem. Now religion has become a problem too.
Well, Joop, I want to say it's been a pleasure talking.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.